You've heard of Cinderella. But you don't know Kamara, not the way I do. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a testimony, told by the one who watched her fall, and rise, and become legend. If you had walked the earth as long as I have, you would know that the stronger souls are not forged in marble halls or beneath silk canopies. No. They are born in kitchens soaked with salt tears, molded by the weight of silence, and tempered by the fire of unbroken faith. I have watched the rise of queens born with cracked heels and ash-smeared cheeks. I have stood over warriors who never touched a blade but fought daily to keep their spirits from rotting. And I have guarded one such soul all her life. Her name is Kamara. And this is her story. Her parents, Amirian and Chidi, were two loving people who met, fell in love with each other, and chose to spend their lives together. 2 years after they got married, Amirian became pregnant, and their joy knew no bounds. The night Kamara entered the world was a stormy one. Amirian labored for 2 days beneath the thatched roof of their clay house, her screams muffled by the harmattan wind. When Kamara finally arrived, silent and wide-eyed, the midwife declared her a strange one, too quiet for a newborn, too away. But Amirian only smiled, holding her daughter to her chest and whispering a blessing. May you never forget the sound of your mother's voice in the dark. Her father was overjoyed. They named her Kamara, and she grew to be a beautiful and kind-hearted girl. For a time, Kamara's life was simple and warm. Amirian's laughter filled their home like sunlight on water. She was a healer, known across the village for her soft-spoken prayers and bitter roots that could chase fever from the bone. Kamara followed her everywhere, in the market, into the bush, even to the shrines. The child learned that kindness was stronger than medicine, and that listening was a kind of magic. But the light never stays forever. Amirian fell ill shortly after the cold season began. Her husband, together with the villagers, tried everything, hot baths, goat blood, sacred leaves, but her spirit was already slipping. On her last night, she held Kamara's tiny hands and whispered, "Be gentle, my daughter, but never small." And then she was gone. Grief gutted Kamara's father. He wailed at her grave, tore his tunic, and let the fire in his eyes die out. But he needed to be strong, for the little girl Amirian left behind. The two bonded deeply. Wherever Chidi went, Kamara was always by his side. When Kamara turned 5, family, friends, and villagers began urging him to remarry, for the sake of Kamara, who needed a mother figure in her life. At first, Chidi refused. He continued being the best father his daughter could ever ask for. But over time, it became clear that both Kamara and Chidi needed companionship and care. Soon, Chidi began courting Ezen, a widow herself with 2 daughters, Chinya and Amoka. Ezen was one of the most wicked and vain women in the village, but she pretended so well that even when people tried to warn Chidi about her, their words fell on deaf ears. Chidi married her, and Kamara, being the innocent child she was excited. She believed she had gained a new mother and 2 sisters. But they were cruel to her, despite her efforts to be friendly. She shared her toys and food with them, but it only earned her more hatred. Still, they pretended to love her in front of her father, for everyone knew Chidi did not joke with his precious daughter. 2 years after Ezen married Kamara's father and moved into their home, tragedy struck again. Chidi fell ill. Despite every treatment, herbs, prayers, and potions, his health never improved. And then, like Amirian before him, one morning, he simply did not rise. Just stillness. Breathless stillness. The village buried him with little ceremony. But whispers rippled through the air like smoke, that this death was no ordinary one. That perhaps, he had been poisoned slowly, over time. The villagers murmured their suspicions behind closed doors, but no one dared ask questions aloud. Not long after his burial, Errand claimed the house and the land as her own. And Kamara? She became the house slave. From that day forward, Kamara lived like a shadow in the home where she once laughed. She rose before dawn to fetch water, pounded yam until her arms throbbed, and washed clothes until her fingers cracked and bled. She dared not eat when Errand and her daughters were at the table, for she was only allowed the leftovers, if there were any. Her room was taken from her. She began sleeping near the hearth, her head resting on folded rags. Her clothes grew ragged. Her feet blistered. But her spirit, never bent. Her stepsisters, Chinya and Amoka, did nothing from sunrise to sundown but eat, gossip, and order her around. Yet through it all, Kamara wore the brightest smile, facing each cruel task with quiet strength. It was on one such errand that fate revealed itself. Kamara had been sent to fetch firewood from the bush when she came across me, disguised as a frail old man, returning from the farm with a heavy basket on my head. She paused, looked at me, and without hesitation offered to help carry my load. I refused at first, but she insisted, gently yet firmly. And so I relented. Who is this girl? I pondered. Why is she so kind-hearted? I had passed many mortals on many roads. None had offered help. Some had passed without so much as a greeting. That day, I made a vow, I would become her guardian. I watched, heart heavy, as she was mistreated in her father's house. I could not shield her from pain, our kind are forbidden to interfere with fate, but I wove strength into her dreams. When her hands bled, I cooled them with invisible balm. When she wept in secret, I cradled her soul with silent hymns. She never saw me, but she felt me. And while Kamara endured this quiet suffering, across the land, the palace was stirring with its own plans. The king's son, Prince Obina, known across the kingdoms for his handsome face and gentle heart, had come of age. As tradition dictated, a festival would be held. A grand celebration, where all maidens of marriageable age would gather, and the prince would choose his bride. The chosen girl would be crowned both princess and queen-to-be. After deliberations with the king's council, the date was set. The town crier was sent into the streets, his gong echoing from hill to market to riverbank. "Come forth, beautiful maidens," he cried. "Dress your finest and walk with grace, for the prince shall choose his bride at the festival. One among you shall wear the crown." Soon after the announcement, the village buzzed with excitement and preparations. Tailors stitched day and night. Mothers bargained for fabric with clenched fists. Everywhere you went, the festival was the only topic of conversation. The maidens chatted excitedly among themselves, even arguing over who would win the heart of the prince. Back in Kamara's house, Errand boasted proudly about how her daughters deserved the prince more than any other girl in the village. She claimed no one else was worthy of the crown. She spent generously, buying the finest fabrics and accessories to ensure her daughters looked their best. Kamara, noticing she wasn't included in the plans, asked innocently if she could attend the occasion. Errand smiled mischievously and agreed, but only on one condition: Kamara must first finish all the heaping chores Errand had carefully prepared for her. Only then could she go to the festival. Resigned to fate, Kamara got to work, knowing deep in her heart that only divine help could make it possible for her to complete everything in time. That evening, after Errand and her daughters had left for the festival, Kamara sat on the cold kitchen floor, utterly exhausted. Her hands were black with soot, her back aching from the day's labor. She stared into the flickering flame, eyes heavy with sadness. Yet her whisper pierced the veil between worlds. Papa. Mama. I know you are watching over me from above. And I know this is not the plan you had for me. But it is well. Hearing her cry, I knew I had to act. There are beings older than time, who walk the thin line between the seen and the unseen. One of them lived at the edge of the village, Mama Ifeoma. People said she was blind, that she spoke to birds, that her acre never burned, even without fire. Most thought her mad. But I knew better. That night, I came to her, riding the wind, my wings heavy with longing. What brings the messenger of God to my abode? She said at once, sensing my presence. I bring a request for you, I replied. Oh. And what could it be? I told her about the orphan girl I had watched over all her life, how Kamara needed to attend the king's festival despite her stepmother's cruelty and refusal. Mama Ifeoma smiled. Leave everything to me, she said softly. Without delay, she rose and made her way to Kamara's home. Kamara, exhausted, had fallen asleep outside, her body curled in the shadows near the cooking hearth. When Mama Ifeoma arrived, she bent gently and gave the girl a soft tap. Kamara stirred, her eyes fluttering open to find a stranger cloaked in moonlight standing over her. Mama, what are you doing out this late at night? Kamara asked as soon as she registered who had woken her. And why are you outside, sleeping at such a dangerous hour? Why aren't you at the village square with your mates for the festival? Mama Ifeoma asked, though she already knew the answer. Kamara looked down and quietly explained, I wasn't allowed to go unless I finished all the chores, and I don't think I'll be able to. Do you want to attend? Mama Ifeoma asked when she finished speaking. Mama, I would love to, Kamara replied, but since I was given an instruction, I'd rather stay back than disobey my mother. Impressed by her discipline and humility, Mama Ifeoma looked her in the eye and asked again, I only want to hear one word, yes or no. Kamara hesitated, then said softly, yes. Good, Mama Ifeoma said. Now, close your eyes. And you must vow never to tell a single soul what happens tonight. Kamara nodded. Mama Ifeoma muttered ancient incantations, her voice weaving through the still air. And in the blink of an eye, Kamara's tattered clothes transformed into flowing indigo and silver oak, so fine it looked as though it had been spun from sky and starlight. Her hair curled and lifted, wrapping itself into an elegant crown adorned with beads carved from lion bone and coral. Her bare feet were kissed by golden sandals. Kamara's heart trembled, not with fear, but with awe. Go, my daughter, Mama Ifeoma said gently. But remember, when the final drum strikes midnight, everything will return to dust. Thank you, Mama. But what about my chores? Kamara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Do not worry, Mama Ifeoma replied with a knowing smile. I will take care of them. Just go, enjoy the festival with your mates. Who knows, maybe you will win the heart of the prince. With that, Kamara was lifted onto a majestic horse. As soon as she was seated, the horse took off, swift and silent, galloping straight toward the village square, where destiny awaited. At the festival, gasps rippled through the crowd the moment Kamara descended from the horse. No one recognized her, not even Chinya, who paused mid-step, squinting in disbelief, not Ezen, who blinked rapidly, her mouth agape. Prince Obina saw her and stilled. She did not bow. She did not flirt. She simply met his gaze, steady and calm, and he, a prince raised among diamonds, was shaken. When it was time to choose a maiden to dance with, Prince Obina stepped forward and offered his hand to Kamara. They danced under the soft glow of lanterns, their movements in perfect rhythm. They spoke of justice, of home, and of what it meant to truly see people. He asked her name. She only smiled and said, "It's a name for another night." She was having such a wonderful time, laughing and dancing with the prince, that she nearly lost track of time. But then the drums began to strike, signaling the hour. Her heartbeat thundered louder than the music as she fled into the night. In her rush, one of her anklets slipped from her foot and was lost in the dust. She vanished just in time, barely seconds before her magical transformation faded. Back at the festival, Ezen, fuming with rage and humiliation, stormed off with her daughters. They hadn't stood a chance, not from the moment that mystery girl arrived. Whose daughter is she? Ezen seethed. And how dare she come here and steal the prince's attention? But then, something tugged at her memory. Wait, she looked familiar. It can't be. That naive girl. No. There's no way Kamara finished all those chores in time, impossible. And where would she have gotten something so fine to wear? Her thoughts raced as she rushed home in suspicion. But as promised, Mama Ifioma had helped Kamara complete every chore. When Ezen and her daughters arrived, they found Kamara lying down quietly, appearing fast asleep. Ezen stood there, staring at the girl, confused, angry, and filled with questions she couldn't answer. The following morning, the village was abuzz with stories of the girl cloaked in starlight, the one who danced with the prince and vanished before midnight. No one knew her name, where she came from, or how she had disappeared without a trace. All that remained was a single golden anklet, found in the dust where she had fled. Prince Obina held it in his palm like a sacred relic. He could not sleep. Her laughter echoed in his ears, her voice, soft but certain, had stirred something deep within him. He had spoken with many maidens, danced with a few, but none had seen him the way she did. None had touched his soul like the girl in indigo and silver. She will not come forward on her own, he told his father, the king. So I will find her. And so it began. With royal guards at his side and the anklet in hand, the prince visited every home in the kingdom. One by one, young women were brought forward to try on the anklet, but none could wear it. Some wept in disappointment. Others tried to force it. But the golden anklet would not be fooled. It shimmered with a will of its own. Ezen heard the news with trembling rage. Chinya, Amaka, get up, get dressed. The prince is coming, she shouted, rushing about the house. She rubbed oil on her daughter's legs, tightened their wrappers, and pinched their cheeks red. When the royal entourage finally arrived at their compound, she greeted them with a forced smile and puffed up pride. My daughters are here, Your Highness, she said sweetly. Perhaps one of them is the girl you seek. Obina looked at Chinya, then at Amaka. He bowed politely, but his heart already knew the truth before the anklet even touched their ankles. It didn't fit. Is there no other maiden in this house besides these two? The prince asked. Ezen hesitated. No, Your Grace. There isn't any other. Just as he turned to leave, Kamara's soft voice rose from the back of the house in a quiet song. Obina paused. You said there was no one else. Then who is that? He asked. Your Grace, it's no one of importance, Ezen snapped quickly. Just the help. The help also stands a chance, the prince replied firmly. Then, turning to his guards, he said, Go. Bring her to me. The guard bowed and followed the sound of the singing. As soon as Kamara entered the room, the atmosphere shifted. Every man turned to look at her with a mix of awe and disbelief. She wore her usual faded wrapper, her hair in simple braids, but her presence was radiant. Kamara stood quietly in the doorway, eyes lowered. Obina stepped closer, his voice gentle. "What is your name?" Kamara looked up, her gaze steady and calm, just like the night before. "It's a name for this moment," she said, echoing the very words she'd left him with. Obina smiled. "Try the anklet," he said. With graceful hesitation, Kamara sat down and lifted her foot. The moment the anklet touched her skin, it shimmered, then locked into place as though it had always belonged there. Gasps filled the room. Ezen's mouth fell open. Chinya and Amaka stood frozen in disbelief. Kamara said nothing. She didn't gloat. She didn't scold. She simply stood, quiet, proud, and unshaken. The prince extended his hand. "Will you come with me?" "Yes, my prince," Kamara replied. She took his hand, and together they walked toward the palace, the golden anklet glinting with every step. Later that day, Kamara was crowned princess in a ceremony filled with music, light, and joy. And though she had once been a shadow in her own home, she now stood tall beneath the sun, beloved, radiant, and finally seen. If you had seen her the way I did, sleeping by hearts, singing through sorrow, healing wounds no one noticed, you would understand why the heavens held their breath the day she was crowned. Kamara, daughter of grief, forged in the silence of loss, became queen not by lineage, but by light. She did not sit upon her throne for power. No. She sat to lift others from the floor where she once knelt. Her first decree was not about riches or feasts, it was about justice. She freed the bound, fed the hungry, and turned abandoned courtyards into places of laughter once more. And what of Ezen and her daughters, you ask? Kamara did not raise her hand in vengeance. Instead, she sent for them. They trembled, thinking it was the gallows. But she offered them kindness. A second chance. She gave them work within the palace, not as punishment, but as path. Whether they took it, I cannot say. But the offer? It was mercy wrapped in dignity. You see, Kamara never forgot the ashes she rose from. Every market she walked through, every child she lifted, every law she changed, she did so with the memory of the girl who once wept in silence. People called her Queen Kamara the Just. But I, who watched her bloom through storms, know her better. She was the daughter of the forgotten, the echo of the faithful, and the living proof that a pure heart can still win in a cruel world. And though I was forbidden to alter fate, I walked a little taller the day she changed it herself. She never saw me, not truly, but I like to believe that when she stood alone on the palace balcony at night and looked up at the stars, she smiled not at the sky, but at me.